Welcome back, everybody, to the very first inaugural episode of Hotlaps. Now, this is a new series right here on the Pixel Therapy channel where we're going to take spicy food, our favorite Sims, and do a whole bunch of laps. But while I do that, I will attempt to answer questions that you guys, the viewers, have asked me. A few weeks back, I went on to all the major platforms. So that was Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, Twitter, and I asked you guys what it is you really wanted to know about motion systems. So a lot of you guys came in asking questions because you're potential buyers, or you just wanted to know more information about this new hardware industry that's growing within our favorite hobby. Now, I compiled those questions to 10 questions, which I will attempt to answer while eating 5 different hot sauces of varying intensity as I do hot laps in iRacing. Now, thank you very much for watching, but towards the end of this video, please take the time to like, subscribe, but more importantly, go down in the comments and tell me what other topic you'd want to see in the next episode of Hot Laps. Even better, ask a direct question in there. What I'll do is I'll compile all of that together and then see which are the best ones or which are the more common ones, and those might turn out in episode 2 of Hot Laps. Thank you very much for your time. I'll see you guys on track. Peace. Alright, so here we are sitting inside the pits at Road Atlanta in iRacing. So the very first hot sauce we're going to try is one from a company called Krakin Chillies. It's a New Zealand-based hot sauce company. And I just jumped onto their website a few days ago. I bought a whole bunch of hot sauces. They actually do 5 different novelty hot sauces. And then I thought I'll try them out for this show. So the very first hot sauce that we have here is the one that you're going to see towards the left of your screen over there. So that is the nicely spiced barbecue sauce. Now, according to their website, it's got the lowest intensity, and I just have it here on a chicken tender. So when I try that, I'm going to jump inside the sim, and then we're actually going to see if we can answer some of your questions. All right, let's give it a shot, and I'll tell you what I think about the hot sauce. Okay, so the hot sauce itself is actually pretty... It's not spicy at all. It's spiced. It's a pretty sweet barbecue hot sauce. It's a very good barbecue hot sauce. But I wouldn't qualify it as a hot sauce, if you know what I mean. I would say it's more of a spicy barbecue sauce. Now, let's actually see what the very first question was that I got. So, one common question that I was getting a lot when it comes to motion systems was, which motion system do I recommend and why? So, when it comes to motion systems, I think the first thing that you really need to look at is what you're working with to begin with, in terms of your hardware. So what sort of chassis do you have? Do you have a direct drive wheel or not? Do you have load cell pedals wheel or not? I do think that motion systems tend to be towards the later part of your sim racing journey. And there are more important things on the list to get. But to answer the actual question as to what would I recommend and why, I tend to lean towards the more actuator-based motion systems. The reason I prefer actuator-based motion systems is I believe that when it comes to motion, you really want to be simulating weight transfer and suspension travel over G-forces. But I'll get into that a little bit later. So I find that actuator-based systems currently at the moment, say compared to, I don't know, say seat movers, they tend to actually be able to produce what I call the primary degrees of freedom, which are your heave, your pitch, and your roll. So by being able to accurately create heave, pitch, and roll with an actuator-based system, you are then able to do your weight transfer and you're able to do your suspension travel quite effectively. Your secondary degrees of motion, which tend to be your surge and your traction loss, in my opinion, can then be simulated by combining the first 3 primary degrees of freedom. Another reason is I think seat movers are really, really cool, right? And seat movers are compact. But the current seat movers on the market, in terms of their price to performance, I do not think they stack up to actuator-based systems in terms of a price-performance ratio. So what do I mean by that? So for example, let's take a really good, well-known seat mover. This would be the next level motion level 3 rig, right? So that comes out at approximately 3,000 US dollars. If you take a DIY commercial based 4 actuator system, such as the one done by E-Racing Lab, so they are DIY Mega Plus, that costs about 2,650 US dollars. So you're getting 4 actuators that can carry a 80/20 sim rig complete with driver, direct drive wheel, load cell pedals, and cockpit, and it's priced in at under the commercial next level racing seat mover. Another example is if you were to go to PT actuators, which tend to be industrial strength. So they're not DIY, but they are industrial strength 4-motion actuators. For a 3 actuator setup, you spend something like close to 4,000 US dollars. And for a 4 actuator setup, you're looking at something like 5,000 US dollars. This is for their experience line, which is their entry level line. And the difference between their experience line and their super line is just that the length of the actuator itself is 100 millimeters versus 150 millimeters. So it's a perfectly capable motion system for about $5,000 compared to a seat mover that's coming in at $3,000. So in my mind, it's the primary motion of pitch, roll, and heave, and also the price to performance that I lean towards actuator-based motion systems rather than seat movers. And that's where I think a lot of the manufacturers are going. A lot of the new manufacturers are dealing with actuators as opposed to seat movers. So that's my advice. That's what I would think you should get as a motion system, and that's why. Right, so question 2, while I just finish off the second barbecue sauce chicken tender, is what are the most important things that people should consider when purchasing a motion system? So in my mind, the first thing you want to do is you want to think long term. I think a lot of people, when they get into sim racing, first of all have to decide whether they like the hobby. So at that point, I'll tell you, get a second-hand entry-level wheel or get an entry-level steering wheel, do some sim racing, and see if it sticks. If you decide you want to then commit to sim racing and do it for longer, I think you really need to look at what your end game is and then purchase thinking ahead. So for example, say you decide that, all right, you currently have a mid-tier wheel like a T300 and you eventually want to get a direct drive wheel. Your T300 is on a your T300, for example, is on a desk and you're using an office chair. When you're picking your cockpit or your chassis or your rig, ask yourself, will this rig be able to hold a direct drive wheel that I'm eventually going to get? Will it be able to support load cell pedals that I'm eventually going to get? Will it be able to work with a motion system that I'm eventually going to get? If the answer is yes to all of those, then you buy that rig. If the answer is no, then you save your money until you can get one that does all of those things. It doesn't mean that you have to get motion there and then, but you're thinking ahead, and what you're doing is you're stopping having to keep buying a new rig when you already have a rig and updating that way. It winds up being more costly that way. The second thing is you need to look at the amount of space that you have. So obviously, if you have limited space, you're going to be looking at seat movers as opposed to actuator-based rigs. But because actuator-based rigs are becoming more popular, generally most people will tend to have enough space for at least an 80/20 rig, especially if they are thinking of motion. Now let's say you've decided you're getting an actuator-based rig, right? you've got the motion money, you've got your 80/20 profile rig, and you've decided you're going with an actuator-based motion system. The three key measurements that you want to look at is, first of all, you want to look at the length, the stroke of the motion system, right? And generally, I think the range that you want is about 100 millimeters, which is 3.9 inches, to about 150 millimeters, which is about 5.9 inches. And essentially, that should cover the gamut between track racing, rally racing, and also any flight sims that you want to do. Obviously, if you're doing rally and flight simming, then you are leaning more towards the 150 millimeter, which is the 5.9 inches, right? In terms of the speed of the actuator, you want an actuator travel that has a minimum of 200 millimeters per second, which is roughly about 7.8 inches per second. At that speed, it doesn't matter how long the actuator travel is, you are not going to get any visual lag between the sensation of motion and what you are seeing on track. It's all just going to flow and come as one. Another thing is you want to look at support for the motion system hardware. So look at what their forums look like. Look at software support, what sims they support, right? I know there are a lot of new companies that are coming out, which is bringing the cost of motion sims down. But then maybe because their software is new, they don't necessarily support as many sims. They don't necessarily support as much software. And maybe even like the community is still quite small. So you don't necessarily get a lot of people helping out with troubleshooting and that sort of a thing. So in summary, first of all, think long term. What do you have? What's your budget like? And what is it that you want to get? If you do decide what you want to do, your options: seat mover or actuator. If you're going with an actuator, you want a minimum speed of 200 millimeters per second. That's about 7.8 inches per second. And the travel length range is 100 to about 150 millimeters. That's a stroke length. That's what I recommend you should be considering and looking into when you're actually purchasing a motion system. Now, let us jump onto the next hot sauce. Go back in the pits. I'll give you my 2 cents about that hot sauce, and then we'll answer more questions. Right, so here we are back at the pits. We've moved on to our next hot sauce. Again, like with all the other hot sauces, this one is from Krakin Chillies. This is a New Zealand company. And this particular hot sauce is called the Razzled Meerkat. And it is a pineapple and pear hot sauce. So I'll give that one a try, and then I'll let you guys know what I think about it. It's a very sweet hot sauce to begin with, which makes sense with the pineapple and pear. It's got a bit of spice to it, but again, I wouldn't necessarily call this a hot sauce. Nah, this is fine. This is fine. It's really good though. Really good flavor. So the third question that we have here is, what sims feel the best with the motion system? Well, this is a very broad question, and it depends a lot on what motion system you have, the type of algorithm that the motion software uses, as well as how you've tuned your motion system. But I would say my top 3 for track racing would be ACC, Race Room, and iRacing. ACC and Race Room, I love the visceral feel when you're actually, like, they really have punchy motion feedback coming through the sim. So like they are fantastic, especially when you go on the Notch Life and you are just really taking all those curves. In those, ACC and Race Room really shine. To give you guys a little more context, I'm using the Sim Race Studio software along with the Thanos controller board and PT actuators. motion system. And yeah, that's just an amazing, amazing combination. Now with iRacing, I find that as with anything with iRacing, it's really easy to set up. So you just plug it in and it works. But the most important thing with iRacing is that you actually get a sense of what the car is doing on track. So it becomes a lot more informative, especially when you're on the limit and you're just about to lose traction and go into that death grip spin, that spin of no return. What the motion system does, especially when tuned correctly, is that it'll give you quite a tug of sway before you snap off and lose traction, and it's a very linear sensation that you can feel it as it's progressing, and you can actually counteract that before it happens. So you actually know when you're about to slide or when you're sliding, and it's a lot more responsive, funnily enough, and a lot more, I guess, it feels a lot stronger than a direct drive does. With a direct drive, you kind of feel it, but it's very instantaneous. Whereas with the motion, because of the weight of the actuators and your body weight and everything, you really feel it progress, and you're like, okay, I'm on the limit and I'm actually about to lose traction. So I find with iRacing, motion helps quite a lot in terms of consistency and staying on track. Now, those are my top 3 track races. If we go off-roading, it would have to be Dirt Rally 2.0. Dirt Rally 2.0 motion is really amazing. And I guess maybe close to that would be Richard Burns Rally. I was quite surprised by Richard Burns Rally, as it's a legacy sim. It's really old. And recently what I've done is I downloaded Richard Burns Rally. It started working instantaneously with my motion system, but I did have to tweak it a little bit. Just a bit, not too much. And then I just ironed out some of the more jarring effects using the filters. And yeah, it was just Rally Sims, Dirt Rally 2.0, Richard Burns Rally. They're just amazing when it comes to motion systems. Like, that is, I believe, where motion systems really shine and draw you in, especially once you have VR on. Oh, it's amazing. It's as good as this hot sauce. Now, I think the next question that I'll probably need to answer is, what's my process of tuning my motion systems? And I think before I actually get into that, I might actually get my next nugget and see if we can progress this a little. So the next question that I tend to get a lot is, what's my process when I am actually tuning my motion system for a sim? And essentially, the principle that I use differs between whether I'm doing track racing or whether I'm doing off-road racing. So with track racing, what I am really aiming for is information. I want my motion system to be informative, to give me feedback that will allow me to be consistent on the track, to know what the car is doing, and to respond appropriately, right? As such, what I tend to do then is I tend to err on the less extreme side, so I dial it down quite a bit. But using the Sim Race Studio software, the SRS software, what I do is I jump into their IntelliTune system. Now what IntelliTune does is you switch it on, and then you do some clean laps for 3 minutes, and it sort of sees how the car is handling the track and what feedback is coming through. It will then give you suggestions for motion settings, which are either soft, medium, or aggressive. I tend to lean into either the medium or the soft. If I go with the medium for whatever reason, so if it's a fairly flat track without too much undulation, I might go for the medium. And then what I'll then do is I will just dial back the pitch and the roll, because a lot of these sports cars really don't have soft suspension. So I dial back the pitch and the roll, but I allow the sway, which is that traction loss feeling, to remain quite high. And then that will allow me to feel what the car's back end is doing before I lose traction. At that point, I then go into the haptics section, and then I turn off haptics for engine rumble. I don't need haptics for engine rumble. I feel it just creates noise, but I do leave haptics for traction loss so that I know when the wheels have broken traction, and I leave the haptics for ABS so that I know when the ABS is kicking in when I'm braking too hard or when I'm putting a lot of pressure on the brakes. Again, I'm keeping it as informative as possible. And trust me, that is enough. A lot of these actuators are quite powerful. That's trying to crank up the settings will actually be a deterrent to your lap times, and you'll be shaking around way too much. You will not be able to drive effectively. Like, I'm sure you can tell from this video alone that there's quite a bit of motion happening with my body, and this is with the softer settings. So you can imagine what it would be like if you cranked the settings all the way up. The same thing is if I were to stop speaking, and you listen to the noise. You're barely getting any noise coming in through the mic. So they are fairly good quality actuators that deliver the information without making way too much noise and not being too jarring. So that's how I approach it. With rally racing, however, or off-roading, it's a little different. I tend to just fire up the IntelliTune. I generally leave it on medium. And then with spike filters, for my track racing, with spike filters, what I do is I usually leave it to about 3 millimeters of travel. So for those of you who don't know, what a spike filter does is it will allow the actuators to move at maximum velocity up to a certain level. Then once it hits that level, any extra movement that's required, it slows it down to smooth it out. So for track racing, I normally have that at about 3 millimeters, so that any motion above 3 millimeters is smoothed out and it's not as jarring. Whereas when I'm doing off-road racing, say like rally racing, I have that to 4 millimeters. Because with rally racing, you tend to get the big jumps, and you want the jumps and the landing to be punchy. So I crank that up to about 4 millimeters, and I give a little more room for the pitch and the roll, for the dips and the undulations and the coming up. And yeah, it's just, again, it's amazing. It's fantastic. So yeah, that's generally how I approach setting up my motion system. I would recommend you guys to actually go inside the description where I have included the WhatsApp groups and links to other motion and tuning guides that are done by some guys in the community, and they like painstakingly go through and make profiles for different cars and different sims. So I'm actually going to add that in the description for you guys to have a look at and just check out the way they do it as well, and maybe even get some profiles from them and see if it works on your motion system. And yeah, it should be good. I'm sure you guys will you'll have a blast with it. Right, so we're gonna head back to the pits, and then we're gonna try the next hot sauce, and then we're gonna answer the next couple of questions. All right, I'll see you there. All right, so our next hot sauce that we're actually gonna try out is this one called the Blue Thunder Blueberry Hot Sauce. Now, according to the website, this is more on the spicier side than the first two. The first two were quite sweet, and really I would put them more in the condiment category than the actual hot sauce. So we'll try this one out, and then we'll see what this is. And we'll answer the next question. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's a spicy hot sauce. Definitely has spice to it. It starts off a little sweet with the blueberries, and then you get the spice coming in towards the end. Yeah, but good. Not good. Definitely leaning towards hot sauce, but I like the first two are condiments, to be fair. Okay, yeah. Yeah. All right. I'm starting to sweat a little bit with that one. Yeah, that feels like a halfway mark hot sauce, to be fair. Right. So the next question that I got a lot is these were people asking me my thoughts on motion. And I think the way a lot of it was phrased was either it's a statement or a legitimate question about whether it's a gimmick or not. Um, so the way I phrased what people want to know is, I guess, first of all, what are the biggest misconceptions with motion? Let's start with that one. What are the biggest misconceptions with motion systems? I think the first misconception with motion systems, in my opinion, is that they simulate G-forces. They don't. Motion rigs are not meant to simulate G-forces. It's impossible to simulate G-force in something that is static. And trying to create a product that promises to do that is lunacy, in my opinion. You're mad. You don't, nah, it doesn't work. Okay? If you find it written that is creating a G-force, that's marketing BS. Okay? The most what a motion system will definitely be able to realistically give you a sense of is weight transfer and suspension travel, right? And I believe, in my opinion, that the primary degrees of freedom, again, this is my saying, it's not an official thing, I'm making it up, heave, pitch, and roll. Those are the ones that really convey weight transfer. And then a combination of those, you will get your secondary degrees of freedom, which is your surge sensation and your traction loss sensation. So the goal of any motion manufacturer, I believe, is to try and convey weight transfer. And if they can successfully do that, you will have a very immersive, natural feeling motion system. And in my mind right now, the way to do it, and I think manufacturers generally agree, because all the new motion companies that are coming out deal with actuators. They're all building actuator systems, right? Because they've clued on to that is what works, that's what gives the most natural feeling, and the costs are coming down. So yes, I think the biggest misconception is that motion systems give you G-forces. I don't think they do that. I think that's just old school thinking, or like, you know, way back. I think we know better now as sim racers, and we need to get that out there now as sim racers, right? Um, Now as I consume Blue Thunder number 2, we need to answer the next question, which is, how would I rate the following motion software, which is SRS Sim Race Studio, Sim Tools, and Fly PT. Now, oh yeah, that's pricey. It's definitely building up. Okay, so I think these pieces of software are trying to achieve different things within the motion software space. So Sim Tools, when partners with the Thanos controller, provide motion solutions to different type of motion systems, seat movers, the DOF reality motion hardware. They do it for PT actuators. They work well with the SFX 100 system, and they also do it for the ProSimu actuators. So they're basically a company that creates immersive software for sim racing hardware. And their ethos is very much plug and play. So you tend to find that it is, you download it, it supports a lot of sims, flight sims, driving sims, rally sims, all kinds of stuff, even space sims. I think it works with Elite Dangerous as well. And you just plug in your hardware, it recognizes the hardware, and it just works. You don't spend time tweaking things. It just gives you good, solid motion feedback that makes sense. And it even, like IntelliTune, you push a button, you drive, it figures it out, and then it tells you, look, this is kind of where your settings should be, and then you just kind of tweak them to tighten them up a little bit. So I think it's fantastic. So that is SRS Sim Racing Studio software. The next one is SimTools. Now, SimTools is more for your tinkerer. It's very, very powerful software, but you really have to sit down and work with it. Like, you can get as detailed as doing car track combos and really working on every single parameter of motion, and it comes out fantastic. It's like an intermediate level, right? But you'd have to sit down and do the work to get out of it. You can't just be someone who, I don't know, kind of have that video game console mentality of like, put it in and it should just work. You really have to sit down with it, dial it in, run the laps, sit inside the menus, tweak the figures, make changes, get back out there, rinse, repeat. And you have to do this for every car, for every track, for every car and track, for every sim. So it really takes a lot. And I think this is what SRS was trying to move away from when they did their software. They wanted you just to be able to say, hey, I've got a race in 15 minutes in a car I've never driven before. Jump in, and then you're getting really decent motion, and then you're off you are to the races, you know? Now, the third one, which is PT Flyer, I don't have a lot of experience with. But from what I gather, it tends to be the one that works well with hexapod type motion systems. And this one kind of looks like, from the little that I've seen of it, it looks like you really need to have that engineering. Like, it's got like little tracer lines on it and graphs and stuff. It looks like you need to have an engineering degree with it. Again, powerful, powerful software. But I think it deals more with, you know, your sort of hexapod motion system. So like the full 6 degrees of motion. Or you could have an actuator based system, but with traction loss and surge incorporated in it. And then it's able to really work between all those axes and give you really fantastic motion. So all three softwares are amazing. All three softwares do a really good job, but they take different levels of competency, time, and patience to dial in. The beautiful thing is, with Thanos, who I truly believe is like an unsung hero of motion, he put together a controller that you can try all of this software up on any actuator-based system that works with a Thanos controller. So whether it's the SFX 100, it's PT actuators, or, you know, what have you, those will work. And what we're seeing is a democratization of motion for people who maybe don't necessarily have big budgets and want to try out different software to actually get it to work with their system. So I think that is awesome. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the pits. We're gonna try the next hot sauce, and then we'll see how we go. So here we go with the next wing over here. So this one right here is called the Smoking Donkey Apple and Smoked Capsicum Hot Sauce. I don't know. It's not quite there yet. Hold on, let's try something. Let's see if we can add a little extra hot sauce to this. Spice it up a little bit. I'm starting to think that maybe I didn't put enough. Or, because the thing that surprises me is I don't eat a lot of hot food. But here we go. So really lather that one up. That's not a hot sauce. That's condiment. It's good. I say it's good. It's really, really good. But that's not a hot sauce. So, if you guys have any good hot sauces that you recommend, especially ones that come in packs that are spicy, please add a link in the comment below. That way I can actually try them and actually, get a sweat on. Don't get me wrong. Krakin Chillies, really good sauces. These are tasty as hell. But they're not hot. They're good. They're really good. Not hot. All right. Let's get to the next question. So the question is, how sturdy should your rig be, and how much active load can your actuators take? So in other words, how long can you use your actuators before you have to cool them down? Look, at this point, really, there's been a lot of work that's gone in developing a lot of these actuators by these companies. And so as long as you stay within the requirements of the weight of the actuators, so you'll find that with each actuator set, it'll tell you how much weight it can carry, right? If you stay within that weight limit, you should be fine to do like a 24-hour enduro with your friends in iRacing and it being okay. I do not think that there is an issue in terms of wear and tear, especially with these inline actuators, the push-pull inline actuators, right? What kind of rig? I still believe that the 80-20 profile aluminum rigs are the best rigs. Maybe not 80-20 because that's a size, but like the aluminum profile rigs are sort of like the best rigs because they give you the flexibility to put what you need on them and do them. However, I recommend that you get one with the thicker 40-160 aluminum profile base. Do not get ones with the skinny, so the bottom part, it should be nice and thick. Right? Do not get the ones with the thinner ones. Why I'm saying this is because that's where you're going to attach your actuators to, right? And when your actuators are moving in different directions to give you your sway, it's going to create a twisting effect on the base of your rig and you can get flicks. But if you've got the thicker 40-160 aluminum frame, it can handle a lot more of that twisting or flicks, and it comes out as being more rigid, and then all of that motion will be a lot more punchy and there's less absorption happening with that sort of a thing. The next question that I got was motion canceling with VR, right? People wanted to know how important it is and does it work? Well, the short answer is it is important if you're motion sick. If you're not motion sick, maybe not so important. So in my case, I set up my motion rig and then I went and got myself my VR headset, which is a HTC Vive 1 VR headset with the sensors coming in. And I was like, you know what, before I actually go through and set up the motion cancellation, let me just race and see what it's like. And I did my race. This was in rally, mind you, with all the jumps and everything. And I felt, I really do not need, I didn't feel the need to add motion cancellation to it at all. But that's probably because, one, the way I have set my motion system, so that it's not overly, I guess, aggressive or pitchy with the pitch and the roll, but it's still quite informative. Like, it moves. You can clearly see the motion system moves, right? But I don't feel like I need to add motion cancellation to it. If, however, you are sensitive to that stuff and you do need motion cancellation, it really depends on the software that you're using. Whether you're using PT Flyer, SRS, I don't know whether SimTools has it, and what type of headset you're using. So it's those two main factors. What headset are you using, as in the type of tracking that the headset uses, and the software itself. And based on those two, there'll be instructions on how you actually need to set it up. I know Steam itself as in Steam, the application on your computer, has got a motion canceling software, but you need to use the sensors, the outside in tracking, and then you put a sensor that you stick to your sim rig, and then it reads that and then cancels out any motion based off that sensor that the rig does that you may be in. So is it important? Yeah, I guess so. If you're motion sick, is it necessary? If you've got a strong stomach and you can handle VR, I think you can get away with it. Hey, it's not as jarring as people think, and a lot of it depends more onto the way you set up your motion rig, anyways. So I don't think it's as jarring. So do with that as you will. That one's open to personal preference. I put that one down too. All right, let's jump into the pits. Try the last two hot sauces. We'll add a little extra on that, and then see how we go. Right, this next hot sauce is called Loose Lips Specialty Hot Sauce. But gauging the way these hot sauces have sort of gone so far, I think I'm sweating more because I'm doing laps, sim racing, and talking than the fact that these hot sauces are spicy. They are really good, tasty hot sauces. Yeah. I actually think that they're at a jalapeno level hot, I think, anyways. The first three have been. So, when I add more, and this may be a mistake, but we're going to do it. And we're going to do it on both nuggets. Really lather them up. And then I'm going to taste them and see how we go. Okay, finally we're getting spice. You see, in my mind, this should have been, I guess if we're doing 5 hot sauces, a level 2 or 3. And this is sort of like Krakin Chillies hottest hot sauce. Still good. This is about as spicy as a jalapeno. Maybe Tabasco. I haven't had Tabasco in a while. It's okay. It's not bad. Really tasty. Not spicy. So that was a little anticlimactic, but again, in the comments, if you guys know really good hot sauces, especially ones that come in kits of varying intensity, please add them to the link below. I need to check them out. All right, let's answer these next couple of questions for you guys. So, the next question that people have been asking me is, in my opinion, would I recommend motion to someone, right? Or is it a gimmick? Motion isn't a gimmick at all. It's not a gimmick. It's 100% legit. Short answer, would I recommend it to someone? Yes, if you have everything else. If you have a direct drive wheel, if you have load cell pedals, go for it. Okay. Whew. Yeah, talking is making that one a little more fiery. Okay. But it's still fine. So short answer, yes. But I think it's something that you need to aspire to. Emotion is something that you like long term. There's so many other things that you could get and add to your immersion. So get a direct drive wheel first, man. Get load cell pedals first. Actually, load cell pedals first, then a direct drive wheel. Then either your visual aids, so your VR triples or a 49-inch ultra wide. Once you've got all of that, then get a motion system. And then, well, that is it. That is the icing on the cake. Is it a gimmick? Nah. Anyone who tells you it's a gimmick either hasn't tried it, or they've tried a motion system at an expo that's been tuned badly. Motion is not a gimmick. Alright? It's what people were saying about direct drive wheels when they first came out. That they're gimmicky and, you know, you don't need them until they try them. Then they're like, okay, no, they genuinely are a game changer. A motion system is not a gimmick at all. The last question that people, and this is more of like a prediction of, is it here to stay? And it's tied to the gimmick aspect, as in, is it here to stay? Is it gonna go away? Are these companies gonna get bankrupt? So the question would be, what's the state of motion today, and where do I see it going, really? Motion today is where direct drive wheels were in 2017, 2016. So that was the time when the OSW DIY kits came out, right? But they'd been out for long enough that I think Sim Racing Bay and SimiCube started putting together kits and selling them. Do you guys remember the OSW kits that were being done by Sim Racing Bay that used SimiCube? Or the ones that were being done by Simplicity? That's where we are with motion now. So motion with the DIY, with the SFX 100, is now being commercially done by companies like E-Racing Lab. But then now manufacturers have come on board, like Shower of PT Actuator. They've added industrial solutions and industrial manufacturing to make their own compatible actuators, right? Then you've got other newer companies coming up, like Sigma Integriali with their DK2 system, like ProSimu, like Cubic Systems, which is a fairly new Polish company. And what you're getting is this growth of motion, but more importantly, the price of motion is coming down. There is no reason whatsoever that you need to be paying more than, I guess, 7,000 US dollars for a full actuator system. For 2,650, you can get a solid proven DIY solution from Sim Racing Lab. For a range between $4,000 to $6,000, you can get either 3 or 4 actuators from PT Actuator Systems with different stroke levels ranging between 100 to 150. For about the $3,000 mark, I believe, to a $5,000 mark, you're now looking at your Sigma Integrali DK2, give or take. So I'm just gonna call this out. When D-Bot comes out and tries to sell you the exact same thing, upwards of $9,000, nah, no. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, in terms of hardware, performance, that a D-Box has to warrant being 3 times as expensive as the lowest entry on that. Absolutely no reason whatsoever. It's kind of like D-Box is what Leo Bodner was to the direct drive. You remember then? Where Leo Bodner for direct drives and they were like $4,000 and that was the price of a direct drive wheel. And then you had SimiCube kits coming out for about $1,000, $2,000. So about a quarter of the price. That's exactly what is happening right now. And I think with the way direct drives have gone, and they've become more consumer to now direct drive costing literally what, 500 US dollars with the CSL 8 Newton meter DD, they've become a new standard. That is exactly what is happening with motion systems now. They are going to become a new standard in sim racing equipment, and they won't be this elitist hardware thing. This is why I am passionate about motion systems, because we're on the cutting edge of something awesome, and I kind of want to go through this journey with you guys. But yeah, that's where I think motion systems are going. And so I think at that point we will close off the very first episode of Hotlaps. Um, it's a show where we have really spicy food and we do a whole bunch of laps. In this particular case, the spicy hot sauces were good. They were very tasty. But yeah, nah, no bueno. I don't think they're condiments. All right? That's what I'd say. So, yeah, you guys in the comments jump in. I'll add a link to the Krakin Chillies hot sauces. They're actually quite good. They are really good and tasty. So they taste like they would go with anything, salads, vegetables. They're really good. They're just not super spicy. That's all. So if you guys have any recommendations for spicy stuff, please add it in the comments. Also, I am looking into streaming on Twitch, so I will be adding a Twitch channel as well. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Please comment and tell me if you enjoyed the video or whatever stuff you'd want to see. And yeah, just look after yourselves and have a good day. Peace.